The coffee in my hand cost $420.75. The email I just read is about to cost me $81,000 a year. I read it twice standing in the hallway outside my office. Mandatory attendance, conference room A, 2 p.m. today, compensation realignment review. I knew what that meant. Anyone over 45 in that building knew what it meant. I watched it happen to Ed Ferris in logistics 4 months ago, to Nora Kimball in client services before that, to Pete Hollis, who had been at Halcyon Group since the building still had the original carpet. Now it was my turn. My name is Walt Grover, 54 years old, 21 years at Halcyon Group, project operations manager, single dad, 2 kids. Sean just started his first year of college. Lily is applying for schools this fall. I had a mortgage of $1,950 a month that did not care about corporate restructuring and a tuition deposit of $2,800 due in 4 weeks. I finished the coffee, tossed the cup, and walked to conference room A. Carl Norris was already seated when I walked in. 40 years old, division VP, brought in straight from Vantera Capital after the buyout. The kind of manager who handled people he did not understand by scheduling more meetings about them. He had a tablet in front of him and did not look up when I sat down. Diane Caldwell from HR sat beside him, folder in her lap, eyes aimed somewhere near the floor. Carl cleared his throat. "Walt, we have completed the compensation realignment review for your position." He slid a single sheet across the table. I looked at the number. 61,000. I had been making $142,000. That is a 57% cut, more than half my income. Gone. I kept my voice level. "Can I ask the reason?" "Organizational restructure," Diane said. "Resource optimization across departments. Same responsibilities?" I asked. Carl nodded without treating it like a real question. "Your responsibilities remain unchanged." I looked at him for a second. He still had not made eye contact. "I will think it over," I said. Diane almost smiled. "We will need your answer by end of day. It is effective immediately." She pushed the folder toward me. Official paperwork, everything legal, everything designed to feel like I had a choice when we both knew I did not. I picked it up, stood, walked out, did not say another word. I sat in my truck for a long time after that. Engine off, folder on the passenger seat. The parking lot was quiet, except for a few people walking to their cars without looking up from their phones. Sean's tuition deposit, $2,800 due in 4 weeks. Lily's application fees stacking up, mortgages $1,950 every month. At $61,000 a year, after taxes I would be taking home maybe $3,100 a month. The math did not work. Could not work, not with 2 kids in a house and an ex-wife in Phoenix who sent child support when she felt like it. I sat there a while just watching the light change across the parking lot, running numbers I already knew the answer to. Then I drove home, made dinner, helped Lily with a practice essay for her college application. Acted like it was just another Tuesday. After she went to bed, I poured a drink I did not finish and stood at the kitchen window staring at nothing. That is when Ned Callahan called. Ned had left Halcyon 10 months ago for Ironfield Services. Smart guy, saw what Vantera was doing early and got out. We had stayed in touch but had not talked in a while. "Walt," he said, "no small talk. Have you looked at LinkedIn lately?" "Not today. Ironfield has been asking about you." "Seriously, for over a year." I held off calling because I thought you would say no again. I thought about the folder still sitting on my kitchen counter. "Tell me more," I said. He did. I could not sleep after we hung up. Spent an hour on Ironfield's website, their client list, their leadership team, a couple of Glassdoor reviews. By midnight, I had a picture of what they were building. By 1 a.m., I knew what I was going to say in the morning. Before I closed the laptop, I went to the bottom drawer of my desk and found my original employment contract. The one from 2003. Back when Halcyon was 11 people sharing a floor in a building downtown that also housed an insurance office and a tax prep place. I flipped to the section I half remembered from years ago. Section 8C. In the event of a compensation reduction exceeding 20%, the employee may resign without notice and without penalty. They cut me 57%. I read it twice, folded it, set it on the desk next to the folder from the meeting. Then I thought about 2003. About what Halcyon actually was before Vantera got involved. We did not have titles back then, not real ones. You either got the work done or you did not. I got it done. First year I worked every major holiday. Slept in the office during a server migration that ran 3 days over schedule. Missed Sean's first baseball game because a client in Seattle needed someone on site at 6 a.m. on a Saturday. I told myself it was temporary. Told myself it would be worth it. By 2010, I was managing 7 enterprise accounts. Bright contracts, real revenue, the kind of clients that kept the lights on for everyone else too. I was the guy they called when something broke at midnight. When a project scope doubled and someone needed to explain to the client why we could still deliver, I made it work every time. Then Vantara Capital bought us in 2020. Big Zoom call, lots of smiles. Their CEO talked about synergy and opportunity and taking things to the next level. What he did not mention was that he would be gone 6 months later with a consulting arrangement in another city. What synergy actually meant was layoffs. What opportunity meant was cost reduction. We got a new logo, they got a gutted operation. Management layers came first. Suddenly, I needed 3 sign-offs for decisions I used to handle with a phone call. We spent more time in meetings about work than actually doing it. Slide decks replaced problem solving. My team went from 7 people to 3. The work did not shrink. It just got redistributed to whoever was left standing. I was fielding client calls at 10 at night, apologizing for system issues I had not been briefed on. Running database rollbacks at 2 in the morning because we did not have enough technical staff and someone had to keep things running. Gary Whitfield, the man who hired me back in 2003, pulled me aside at a company event about a year ago. He was quieter than usual. "Watch yourself, Walt," he said. "The new regime does not value tenure. They are clearing the deck 1 floor at a time." I did not listen hard enough. Thought 21 years of results would count for something. Turns out I was wrong about that. I pulled into the Lakeview Grill on 3rd at 7:50 the next morning. Jeans, boots, no tie. Hank Drummond was already in a booth by the window, mid-50s, rolled sleeves, no jacket. The kind of man who had actually built teams before, not just inherited them. A coffee was waiting across from him when I sat down. "Black, right?" he said. "Yeah." We skipped the opener. He told me Ironfield had been tracking my client retention numbers, 91% over 6 years. In this industry, working under the budget constraints I had been handed, with Vantara's reorganizations running in the background, that number did not happen by accident. "Every time we have gone after one of Halcyon's accounts," Hank said, "we get the same response. We trust Walt. We are not going anywhere while he is there." He leaned forward slightly. "You're not just running operations, you're the reason those clients have not already left." I kept my hands around the mug and let him keep going. He pulled a folder from his bag and slid it across. Base salary $168,000. Performance bonus structure tied to retention and revenue. Full benefits, stock options that actually had value, signing bonus, $15,000. I kept my face steady. Then he said the part that confirmed everything. "We have seen a vendor proposal circulating inside Vantara, your entire department. Offshore transition. They are targeting completion within 8 months. The salary cut you received yesterday is step 1. They push compensation down until people quit voluntarily. That way there is no severance to pay. 2 sources," he said, both internal. I had suspected it for weeks. Hearing it stated plainly was a different thing. "I will give you my answer by 3 this afternoon," I said. Hank nodded. Did not push, just picked up his coffee. I left the diner and sat in my truck for a few minutes before driving, not because I was uncertain, because I wanted to be clear-headed about the sequence of what came next. One thing had been bothering me since the day before. Earlier that week, Brett Norris had been CC'd on a client thread involving Paramount, one of my longest accounts. I had meant to ask him about it. At the time, I assumed it was an administrative overlap, the kind of thing that happened when a new person got added to distribution lists without context. But sitting there in the parking lot outside the diner, I wanted to see the full thread before I did anything else. I drove back to Halcyon. Badge still worked. Took the elevator up, sat at my desk and opened the email chain. Brett Norris, 27 years old, Carl's son, added to my team 3 weeks earlier as an operational liaison without anyone explaining to me what that role actually meant, had sent a formal service proposal to the Paramount account contact. The email went out under my name in the header, signed on behalf of the department, no mention to me beforehand, no approval requested. The proposal had 2 factual errors in the service terms and quoted a pricing structure we had not used in over a year. I printed it, folded it, put it in my jacket pocket next to the copy of Section 8C. Then I walked down the hall to conference room A. Carl was there. Same posture as the day before, tablet open, pen moving. Diane sat beside him with her folder. They both looked up when I walked in without knocking. Carl said, "We need your decision, Walt." I pulled out a chair and sat down slowly. "I have a question first. Who is taking point on the Paramount rollout next month?" Being reassigned, Carl said, "To who, that is not your concern at this stage. It is when I made that client a direct commitment about who would manage the transition." I looked at him. "You're moving the whole department offshore. That is what this is." Silence. The specific kind that does not need a follow-up question. I reached into my jacket and set the printed email on the table in front of him. Brett sent this to my Paramount contact 4 days ago under my name, with errors in the service terms without telling me it was going out. Carl looked at the page, then at me. He did not say anything. I set the contract copy beside it, already folded to Section 8C. I am not accepting the compensation change. I am resigning effective now. Carl's expression shifted. You cannot just walk out of here. Section 8C of my 2003 contract. Compensation reduction exceeding 20% allows immediate resignation without notice or penalty. You cut me 57%. I'm well within the terms. Diane's hands started moving through her papers quickly. You will be hearing from our legal team, Carl said. For what? I kept my voice flat. I have not taken a single internal file, have not forwarded one document. Everything I'm walking out with is already in my head. 21 years of client relationships. That belongs to me. He opened his mouth. I was already standing. I turned to Diane. Resignation form in that folder. She nodded without looking up. Slide it over. She did. I signed it, dated it, pushed it back across the table. Then I walked out of that room, took the elevator down, crossed the lobby, and pushed through the front door for the last time. Got in my truck, started the engine. By the time I reached the main road, my hands were completely steady. I called Ned from the parking lot before I pulled out. 2 things I said. I'm in. And I need room for Cliff Jennings within 60 days. He is getting the same treatment I just walked away from. Ned did not hesitate. Already on our list. We want the whole operation, not just the person running it. Good. Tell Hank I start Monday. I hung up and drove home, made lunch. Sat at the kitchen table and ate it like it was any other Wednesday. The folder from the meeting was still on the counter where I had left it the night before. I put it in the recycling bin without opening it again. At 3 in the afternoon, the voicemail started. Regional managers, someone from the legal department. Carl himself called twice and hung up both times without leaving a message. By 4, the calls I actually wanted were coming in. Paramount Enterprises, Crestfield Industries, 2 other accounts I had managed for years. All of them had heard something. None of them had been told anything officially. Walt, we just found out you left. Nobody informed us. What is going on? I gave each of them the same answer. Halcyon made decisions I could not stand behind. I resigned this morning. I started Ironfield Services on Monday. There was always a pause after that. A few seconds where the person on the other end was processing it. Then, can we reach you there? Yes, same number. By evening, Cliff Jennings had sent me 3 screenshots from inside Halcyon. Brett being assigned lead contact on the Crestfield account. Brett sending a meeting invite with the wrong time zone listed. Brett asking a colleague in a side message what project management system the team used. I texted Cliff back 1 line. Check your email tonight. Ironfield sent him a formal offer at 7 p.m. He accepted before 9. 3 days into my first week at Ironfield, a number I did not recognize came up on my phone. Walt, this is Len Bradshaw, the CEO of Vantera Capital. No assistant putting the call through, no preamble. I am aware there has been significant client movement following your departure, he said. There is concern at the board level about the trajectory. Clients followed me because they trusted me, I said. That is not something you can restructure around. That is just how it works. He said Carl had characterized the situation differently in his report. I stopped him. Carl offered me a 57% compensation cut with no prior notice and no explanation. He did this the same week his son was sending proposals to my clients under my name without my knowledge. If you want to have a conversation about professional conduct, I would start there. Long pause. What would it take to bring you back? A written apology sent to every person still on that team, acknowledging specifically how the last several months were handled. Public to the department, not a private note to me. 4 seconds of silence. Maybe 5. I cannot do that, he said. I know, I said. Good luck, Len. I ended the call and went back to the proposal I had been reviewing. The first 4 months at Ironfield moved fast. Real office, solid infrastructure, a team that showed up because they wanted to be there. I was still putting in long hours, but the difference was it was for work that was actually going somewhere. Nobody was scheduling a meeting to discuss why we needed fewer meetings. Nobody was asking me to build a slide deck to explain a problem I could fix in an afternoon. Hank ran things the way Gary Whitfield used to run things at the old Halcyon before the acquisition. You gave people real responsibility and then you let them do the work. Simple idea, rare in practice. By the end of month 2, 4 of my former Halcyon accounts had moved their contracts to Ironfield. I had not pitched a single one. They called me directly. Every conversation started the same way. We are not getting real responses anymore. Decisions that used to take a day are taking 3 weeks. Can we bring our contract over? Every time I said the same thing. Let me see what we can do. Halcyon's response was to slash rates. They cut margins to the bone trying to hold on. It did not work. You can negotiate a price down. You cannot negotiate trust into existence. Word filtered through the network over the following months. Carl Norris resigned 5 months after I left. 3 major client handoffs had gone badly. He had apparently run a software demonstration for a prospective account without understanding the core functionality of what he was showing. Diane Caldwell was moved to an internal development role, which in corporate language means they needed her gone but did not want to pay severance. The offshore transition plan was quietly shelved, no announcement, no explanation. The vendor contracts were canceled without a press release. Halcyon lost 6 of its 9 enterprise accounts within the year. The company started issuing statements about refocusing on core competencies. Anyone who had been around long enough knew what that meant. I ran into Gary Whitfield at an industry conference in Denver about 6 months after I had left. He spotted me across a crowded room and came straight over. We shook hands and he held on for an extra second. "They did you wrong, Walt," he said. "But you came out clean." I shook my head. I did not land on my feet. I jumped. He laughed at that. Understood exactly what I meant. We got coffee and talked for almost 2 hours. He had left Halcyon 2 months after me. Said he could not keep watching what they were doing to something we had spent years building together. "You know what was hardest?" he said. "It was not the politics. It was watching them dismantle something real and call it progress." I knew exactly what he meant. I had been thinking the same thing since the day I walked out. 6 months after I started at Ironfield, I had a corner office with windows that faced west. Real windows, not the frosted glass panel I had been staring at for the last 4 years at Halcyon. Director of Operations, 19 people on my team. The title matched the work for the first time in a long time. I was at my desk on a Wednesday afternoon reviewing a client proposal when my phone buzzed. Lily's name on the screen. I picked up immediately. "Dad," she said, "I got the merit scholarship, $6,500. I set the phone on speaker and put it face up on the desk and just sat there for a moment looking at the ceiling. "That is great, Lily. That is really great." We had been running the numbers for months. This changed them. She knew that. We talked for almost 20 minutes about her classes, about the campus, about Sean's first semester grades, about nothing that had anything to do with work. The kind of conversation I used to cut short because I had a deliverable due or a client call backed up behind it. After we hung up, I sat quietly for a while. A few weeks later, Sean had a Friday night game. I was in the stands before warm-up started, no email open on my phone, no mental checklist running in the background. Just the smell of cut grass and a metal bleacher getting cold under me and my kid out on the field doing the thing he had worked all season for. Sean pitched 4 innings, threw 2 strikeouts in the 3rd. I saw both of them. Not on a highlight someone texted me later. Right there, in real time from 30 feet away. That is the thing that is hard to explain to someone who has not been through it. The salary increase matters. The title matters. But neither of those things is what you think about when you're sitting in those bleachers on a Friday night. What you think about is the years you spent somewhere else when you could have been right there. I keep a photo on my desk at Ironfield. First week at Halcyon, 2003. 11 people in a conference room with bad overhead lighting and someone's birthday cake on the table in the corner. I'm in the back row, grinning like I just won something. Young enough to think hard work was all it took. Naive enough to believe that loyalty moved in both directions automatically. That guy had no idea what was coming. The buyout, the new management that did not know the business and did not want to learn it. The folder slid across a table in a windowless room by a man who had never once asked what I actually did for the company. But that guy also knew something real. He knew what good work felt like from the inside. He knew when a client trusted you versus when they were just tolerating the contract. He knew the difference between a team that wanted to solve the problem and a team that wanted to document why the problem could not be solved. 21 years of that knowledge. They thought they were cutting a salary. What they actually did was remind me that the knowledge was mine, not theirs. I think about the moment in that conference room when I set Brett's proposal on the table in front of Carl. The way he looked at it and had nothing to say, not because he was embarrassed, because he had never considered that there would be a moment of accountability at all. He had been operating in an environment where the people above him approved everything and the people below him absorbed everything. Nobody had ever just placed the evidence on the table and waited. That is what 21 years gives you. Not just the relationships, the clarity, knowing exactly what you have, knowing exactly what they need, and knowing that those two things are not the same as what they are offering you. Len Bradshaw never called again after that first conversation. Carl was gone by month 5. The offshore plan got shelved without a single internal announcement. Halcyon kept bleeding clients and kept issuing statements about strategic realignment that nobody outside the boardroom believed. I did not do any of that. I just stopped holding things together for people who had decided I was replaceable. Gravity did the rest. Gary Whitfield sent me a message a few months after Denver. Short note, said he had started consulting for a mid-size firm in the region and was the happiest he had been in years. Said he finally remembered why he got into this business in the first place. I wrote back 2 sentences. Told him I understood completely. Some mornings I drive past the old Halcyon building on my way into the office. The lights are still up on the 4th floor. Someone up there is answering emails at 7 a.m. for a company that sees them as a line item, working hard because they still believe it will matter, thinking that if they just deliver enough, loyalty will come back around. I was that person for a long time. I do not judge it. I just know better now. If you have ever sat in a parking lot after a meeting like the one I walked out of, doing the math in your head and coming up short, you know exactly what that wait feels like. It is not just about the money. It is about being told that 2 decades of your work has been quietly reclassified as overhead. Here's what I learned. The people who built the thing always know more than the people who bought it. That knowledge does not expire. It does not get reallocated. It goes where you go. You are not starting over. You're taking everything with you. The only question worth asking is whether you're still waiting for permission to leave.